Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair watching the stars drift past his ship's main window. The USS Horizon had been traveling through space for 3 weeks now, exploring new systems far from Earth. Jake loved these quiet moments when everything was peaceful and the crew could just focus on their work. The Horizon was not a big ship compared to some of the alien vessels Jake had seen, but it was home to him and his crew of 60 humans. They were part of Earth's exploration fleet, always looking for new worlds and new forms of life. Jake had been a captain for 8 years now, and he still felt excited every time they found something new. "Captain, we're getting a signal," called out Lieutenant Mary Johnson from her station. She was the ship's communications officer and had been with Jake's crew for 4 years. "It's coming from the Kepler 442 system, about 6 light years from here." Jake turned his chair toward Mary. "What kind of signal?" "It's a distress call, sir. The translation computer is working on it now." Mary's face looked worried as she listened to her headset. "Captain, this sounds really bad. They're saying their world is dying." The main screen in front of Jake lit up with a map showing the Kepler 442 system. A red dot blinked where the signal was coming from. Jake had heard of this system before. It was home to a species called the Zephyrians, who lived in the oceans of their water-covered planet. "Put the signal on speaker," Jake ordered. The bridge filled with strange sounds that slowly became words as the computer translated them. The voice sounded desperate and scared. "This is the current speaker of the Zephyrian people. Our world is dying. The fire mountains under our seas are erupting everywhere. The water grows too hot for us to live. We need help. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help." Jake felt his stomach drop. He had never heard such fear in anyone's voice before. The current speaker continued talking, explaining how their planet's underwater volcanoes were making the oceans too hot for their people to survive. They had some small spaceships, but not enough to save everyone. "How many people are we talking about?" Jake asked the dot. Lieutenant Tom Wilson, the ship's science officer, looked up from his computer. "According to our files, sir, the Zephyrians have about 400 million people living on their planet. Their population is spread across underwater cities all over their world. 400 million people." Jake tried to imagine that many lives in danger. It was more people than lived on some of Earth's biggest colonies. He knew he had to do something, but the Horizon was just one small ship. There was no way they could help that many people alone. "Send a message to Earth Command," Jake told Mary. "Tell them we need to contact the Galactic Council right away. This is an emergency." The Galactic Council was a group of different alien species that worked together to keep peace in their part of the galaxy. Earth had joined the Council 50 years ago, though humans were still considered the new kids compared to species that had been members for hundreds of years. The Council had rules about helping other species, and Jake hoped they would act quickly. 2 days later, Jake found himself in a meeting room on the Council's main station. The station was huge, bigger than any human city, and it floated in space between several star systems. Representatives from dozens of different species worked there, making decisions that affected billions of lives across the galaxy. Ambassador Lisa Carter represented Earth on the Council. She was a smart woman in her 50s who had been dealing with alien politics for most of her career. Jake had met her a few times before, and he knew she cared deeply about doing the right thing. "The situation is getting worse," Jake told the council members gathered around the large circular table. "The Zephyrians are saying the volcanic activity is increasing. They might only have 3 months before their ocean world becomes too hot to live in." The council chamber was filled with beings that looked nothing like humans. The Altarians were tall and thin with blue skin and large eyes. The Mentari looked like giant insects with multiple arms. The Centaurians were the most human-like, but they had 4 arms and skin that changed colors based on their emotions. High Chancellor Vexstar of the Altarians spoke first. His voice was cold and formal. "The Council has reviewed the situation concerning the Zephyrians. While we understand this is unfortunate, we must consider the practical aspects of any rescue operation." Jake didn't like the sound of that. When politicians started talking about practical aspects, it usually meant they were about to say no to helping people. The Zephyrians have contributed very little to galactic civilization, Vexstar continued. Their technology is primitive, compared to most council species. They have no significant trade relationships or cultural exports. The cost of evacuating 400 million aquatic beings would be enormous. Commander Zixara of the Mentari clicked her mandibles together, which Jake had learned was their way of showing agreement. Our calculations show that such an operation would require hundreds of ships and massive resources. The probability of success is low, and the cost would be better spent on more advanced civilizations. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. These aliens were talking about 400 million lives like they were discussing a business deal. With respect, sir, we're talking about an entire species facing extinction. Doesn't that matter more than how much money they contribute to galactic trade? The Centaurian representative, whose skin had turned a sad purple color, spoke up. Captain Morrison, we understand your feelings. However, the Council must consider the greater good. Our resources are limited, and we have responsibilities to our member species first. Ambassador Carter stood up from her seat. Council members, I remind you that the founding charter of this organization states that we are committed to the preservation of life and the protection of peaceful species. The Zephyrians have never attacked anyone. They've never caused any problems for the galactic community. They're just asking for help to survive. The charter also states that aid should be provided to species that contribute to the advancement of galactic civilization, Vexstar replied. The Zephyrians do not meet this criteria. Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Council was going to let an entire species die because they weren't useful enough. He looked around the room at all the different aliens, hoping to see some sign that someone would stand up for the Zephyrians, but one by one they all voted the same way. The Altarians voted no, the Mentari voted no. Even the Centaurians, who Jake thought might be more compassionate, voted no. Only Ambassador Carter voted yes, but 1 vote out of 12 wasn't enough. The Council has decided, Vexstar announced. No aid will be provided to the Zephyrians. This session is closed. Jake felt sick as he watched the alien representatives leave the chamber. They were all going back to their comfortable lives while 400 million people faced death. Ambassador Carter walked over to him, her face showing the same anger and sadness he felt. I'm sorry, Jake, she said quietly. I tried everything I could. I know you did, Jake replied. But this isn't over. Those people are still out there, and they still need help. Ambassador Carter looked at him with a strange expression. What are you thinking? Jake thought about his crew back on the horizon. He thought about Earth and all the ships in the human fleet. They weren't as advanced as some of the alien species, but they had something that seemed to be missing from the Galactic Council. I'm thinking that maybe the Council was wrong about who contributes to galactic civilization, Jake said. Maybe. What really matters isn't how advanced your technology is or how much money you make. Maybe what matters is whether you're willing to help when someone needs it. That night, Jake sent a message to Earth. He told them about the Council's decision, and about the Zephyrians who were still waiting for help that might never come. He knew what he was asking might be impossible, but he had to try. The response came back faster than he expected. It was from Admiral Ben Torres, the head of Earth's Colonial Defense Force. The message was short but clear. Help is on the way. Admiral Ben Torres stood in the main control room of Earth's Colonial Defense Force headquarters, looking at the huge screen that showed star maps from across the galaxy. He had been waiting for Captain Morrison's report about the Galactic Council meeting, but he already knew what the answer would be. The Council always made decisions based on politics and money, not on saving lives. When Jake's message arrived, Ben wasn't surprised by the Council's refusal to help the Zephyrians. What did surprise him was how angry it made him feel. Ben had been a military officer for 30 years, and he had seen a lot of terrible things happen in space. But the idea of letting 400 million people die because they weren't considered important enough to save made his blood boil. Get me a connection to President Martinez, Ben told his assistant, Commander Sally Brooks. and call an emergency meeting with all department heads. We need to talk about this right now." Within an hour, Ben was sitting in a room with the most important people in Earth's government and military. President Carlos Martinez looked tired, but his eyes were sharp as he listened to Ben explain the situation. "So let me understand this correctly," the president said. "The Galactic Council voted to let an entire species die because they don't think the Zephyrians are worth saving." "That's exactly right, sir," Ben replied. "And we're the only ones who voted to help them." Secretary of Defense Linda Wright leaned forward in her chair. "Admiral, what kind of resources would we need for a rescue operation like this? We're talking about 400 million aquatic beings on a planet that's literally cooking itself." Ben had been thinking about this question since he got Jake's message. It would be the biggest rescue operation in human history. We'd need every available ship, and we'd have to convert many of them to carry water-breathing aliens. The cost would be enormous. "How enormous?" asked Treasury Secretary David Kim. "Enough to delay our colonial expansion plans by at least 10 years. Ben answered honestly. "Maybe longer. We'd have to use ships that were supposed to carry human colonists to new worlds." The room went quiet as everyone thought about what that meant. Earth's population was growing, and there were millions of humans waiting for the chance to start new lives on colony worlds. If they used those ships to save the Zephyrians, it would mean fewer opportunities for their own people. President Martinez looked around the table at his advisors. "I want everyone's honest opinion. What should we do?" Secretary Wright spoke first. "From a military standpoint, this operation would be incredibly risky. We'd be sending our ships into a system with massive volcanic activity. We could lose vessels and crew members. From an economic standpoint," Secretary Kim added, "this would set back our development by decades. We'd be spending resources on aliens instead of our own people." Ben felt his heart sinking as he listened to the practical arguments against helping the Zephyrians. They were all true, but they missed the point entirely. "Sir," Ben said, "may I say something?" President Martinez nodded. "Go ahead, Admiral." "Everyone in this room is right about the costs and risks. This operation would be expensive and dangerous, but I keep thinking about something. 50 years ago, when Earth first made contact with alien species, we were scared. We didn't know if they would accept us or try to destroy us. The Galactic Council could have ignored us or treated us like primitives." Ben stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the blue sky of Earth. Instead, they welcomed us into their community. They shared their technology and their knowledge. They helped us become part of something bigger than just our own world. Now we have the chance to do the same thing for someone else. "But the Council refused to help," Secretary Wright pointed out. "Why should we do something they won't do?" Ben turned back to face the room. "Because maybe that's exactly why we should. Do it. Maybe the reason we're different from the other species isn't our technology or our military strength. Maybe it's because we still remember what it's like to be alone and scared and hoping someone will care enough to help." President Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Ben with a slight smile. "Admiral, if we do this, what would you need?" Ben felt a rush of excitement and fear. "Every ship we can spare, sir. Colony ships, military vessels, transport ships, even civilian craft if people are willing to volunteer them. We'd need Dr. Helen Wang and her xenobiology team too. Figure out how to keep the Zephyrians alive during the journey. And we'd need to work fast. Captain Morrison says they might only have 3 months. What about finding them a new home?" asked Secretary Kim. "We can't just rescue them and leave them floating in space." "New Pacifica," Ben said immediately. "The colony world we've been preparing in the Tau Ceti system. It's mostly ocean, perfect for an aquatic species. We'd planned to put human colonists there, but we could share it. Share one of our colony worlds with aliens?" Secretary Wright looked shocked. "Sir, that's unprecedented. No species has ever done anything like that." President Martinez stood up slowly. "Linda, unprecedented is exactly what we need to be. The Galactic Council just showed us that the way things are usually done doesn't work when people are dying. Maybe it's time for a new approach." Ben felt proud of his president in that moment. Sir, should I start making preparations? Yes, but carefully. I want to talk to Congress first, and I want to know what the public thinks. This decision affects all of humanity, not just us. 2 days later, Ben was amazed by what happened. The news about the Zephyrians spread across Earth's communication networks, and the response was overwhelming. Citizens organized fundraising, campaigns to help pay for the rescue operation. Civilian ship owners volunteered their vessels for the mission. Retired military officers came out of retirement to help with the logistics. Dr. Helen Wang, Earth's leading expert on alien biology, worked around the clock with her team to design portable habitat systems that could keep Zephyrians alive on human ships. The technology was challenging, but Helen was determined to make it work. The key is maintaining the right water temperature and chemical balance, she explained to Ben during one of their planning meetings. Zephyrians need very specific conditions to survive. Their bodies are adapted to their home ocean, so we have to recreate that environment as closely as possible. Captain Amy Brooks, Ben's daughter and a skilled medical officer, volunteered to lead the medical ships in the rescue fleet. Dad, I've been reading about Zephyrian physiology. They're incredibly sensitive to temperature changes. If we don't get this right, we could kill them even while trying to save them. Ben looked at his daughter with pride and worry. Amy, this mission is going to be dangerous. The volcanic activity on their world is unpredictable. I need you to understand that. I understand, sir, Amy replied formally, then smiled. But I also understand that 400 million people are counting on us. I wouldn't miss this for anything. Commander Tony Garcia, one of Earth's best logistics experts, was working on the massive challenge of coordinating hundreds of ships in a rescue operation. Admiral, we're going to need supply stations along the route. The journey from the Zephyrian world to New Pacifica will take weeks, and we can't carry enough supplies for that many refugees on the ships themselves. What do you recommend? Ben asked. We set up temporary supply depots at 3 points along the route. Fast cargo ships can carry food, water, and medical supplies to keep the refugees alive during the journey. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison was still in the Kepler 442 system, monitoring the situation on the Zephyrian world. His daily reports were getting worse. The volcanic activity was increasing faster than expected, and the water temperature was rising every day. Admiral, we're running out of time, Jake reported during one of their communications. The Zephyrians are starting to evacuate their deeper cities because the water is getting too hot. Their current speaker is trying to keep everyone calm, but I can hear the fear in her voice. Ben looked at the deployment schedule on his desk. Jake, we're moving as fast as we can. The first ships will reach you in 10 days. 10 days might be too long for some of their cities, Jake replied, but I'll do everything I can to help them hold on. As Ben prepared for the largest rescue operation in human history, he received an unexpected message. It was from Dr. Cathara, a Centauran scientist who had been present at the council meeting. Admiral Torres, the message began, I know my government voted against helping the Zephyrians, but I cannot stand by while an entire species faces extinction. I'm coming to help with my research ship and my team. We have advanced water purification technology that might be useful. More messages followed. A group of Rigelian merchants offered their cargo ships. Young Altarians defied their government's position and volunteered to help. Even some individual Mentari sent messages of support. Ben realized that while the governments of the galaxy had turned their backs on the Zephyrians, individual people from different species still had consciences. Humanity's decision to help was inspiring others to stand up for what was right. Sally, Ben called to his assistant, send a message to all the volunteers from other species. Tell them they're welcome to join our fleet, and send a message to Captain Morrison. Tell him, help is coming and he won't be alone. As the first ships of the human rescue fleet prepared to launch, Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the USS Horizon as the largest rescue fleet in human history arrived at the Zephyrian homeworld. The sight took his breath away. Hundreds of ships filled the space around the dying planet, their lights twinkling like stars against the darkness. Colony ships, military vessels, cargo transports, and even small civilian craft had all come together for one purpose: to save lives. The Zephyrian world below them was a beautiful blue marble, but Jake could see the angry red spots where underwater volcanoes were erupting. The planet's oceans were slowly turning into a boiling soup that would kill everything living in them. They didn't have much time. "Captain, we're getting a communication from the current speaker," reported Lieutenant Mary Johnson from her station. "She wants to meet with you in person," Jake nodded. He had been preparing for this moment ever since the human fleet arrived. The current speaker was the leader of the Zephyrian people, and Jake knew she would be suspicious of their offer to help. After all, the Galactic Council had already abandoned her people. An hour later, Jake found himself in a small underwater facility on the edge of one of the Zephyrian cities. The building was filled with water, and Jake wore a special diving suit that let him breathe and talk underwater. The technology felt strange, but Dr. Wang's team had done amazing work making it possible for humans and Zephyrians to meet face to face. The current speaker swam toward Jake with graceful movements. She looked like a cross between a dolphin and a human, with smooth blue-green skin and large, intelligent eyes. Her name, the translation computer told him, was Flowing Wisdom. "Captain Morrison," Flowing Wisdom said, her voice coming through the water with a musical quality that the translator couldn't quite capture. "I must ask you directly, why are you here?" "The Galactic Council has already decided we are not worth saving." Jake felt the weight of her question. Through the facility's transparent walls, he could see Zephyrian families swimming past, their faces showing the fear and desperation of people who knew their world was ending. "Because the Council was wrong," Jake said simply. "Every life has value. Every species deserves a chance to survive. We're here because it's the right thing to do." Flowing Wisdom stared at him for a long moment. "But surely you want something in return?" "No species offers help without expecting payment. The only thing we want is to help your people live," Jake replied. "That's enough payment for us." The current speaker's large eyes seemed to shimmer, and Jake realized she was crying. "I have lived for 300 of your years, Captain Morrison. I have seen many species come and go from our world. None have ever offered help without asking for something in return. Why are humans different?" Jake thought about that question. Maybe because we remember what it's like to be alone and scared. Maybe because we believe that helping others is what makes us civilized. Meanwhile, on the surface ships, the rescue operation was beginning in earnest. Chief Engineer Carlos Martinez worked alongside Zephyrian technicians to set up transport systems that could move large numbers of people from the underwater cities to the human ships above. "The problem is time," Carlos explained to Captain Amy Brooks over the communication system. "The water temperature is rising faster than we expected. Some of the deeper cities are already too hot for the Zephyrians to survive in." Amy looked at the medical readings Dr. Wang's team was sending her. "How many people are we talking about in those deep cities?" "About 50 million, Carlos replied grimly. "And we can't reach them with our current equipment." Dr. Helen Wang was working frantically in her mobile laboratory, trying to solve the problem of keeping so many Zephyrians alive during the journey to safety. Each portable habitat system could only support a few thousand individuals, and building enough systems for 400 million people seemed impossible. "We need a breakthrough," Helen told her assistant, Dr. Rick Palmer. "The current systems work, but we can't build them fast enough." That's when help arrived from an unexpected source. Dr. Cathara, the Centaurian scientist who had defied her government to help, arrived with her research ship and a team of volunteers. Her species had been working with water-based life support systems for centuries. "Dr. Wang," Cathara said through the translator, her forearms moving in what Jake had learned was a gesture of greeting. "My people have developed large-scale aquatic habitat systems. We can share this technology with you." Helen felt a surge of hope. "How large-scale are we talking about?" "Each system can support 50,000 Zephyrians for several weeks," Cathara replied. "We brought 10 systems with us, and we can show you how to build more." The cooperation between human and Centaurian scientists was amazing to watch. Despite their different body types and ways of thinking, they found ways to work together. Helen's team provided the manufacturing capabilities while Cathara's team shared their advanced knowledge of aquatic life support. But the rescue operation faced other challenges too. Captain Morrison received a report that made his heart sink. Commander Tony Garcia's voice was tense as he explained the situation. "Captain, we've got a problem. The volcanic activity is increasing much faster than predicted. 3 of the major underwater cities are reporting critical temperatures. They need to evacuate immediately, but we don't have enough transport capacity ready." Jake looked at the tactical display showing the locations of all the Zephyrian cities. The ones in the deepest parts of the ocean were heating up first, and they were also the hardest to reach. "What about the Rigelian cargo ships?" Jake asked. "Are they ready?" "They're still being modified for aquatic passengers," Tony replied. "We need at least another day." A day they didn't have. Jake made a decision that would risk human lives to save Zephyrian ones. "Tell Captain Brooks to take her medical ships down to the deep cities. They're not fully equipped for mass transport, but they can carry some people." Amy Brooks received the order with determination. "Understood, Captain. We'll save as many as we can." The medical ships descended into the superheated waters around the deep cities. The conditions were dangerous for both humans and Zephyrians. The water was hot enough to damage equipment, and the volcanic activity made navigation treacherous, but the human crews pressed on. They worked in shifts, using their ship's emergency systems to create temporary safe zones where Zephyrians could wait before being transported to the surface. It was exhausting, dangerous work, but they never gave up. Flowing Wisdom watched the rescue operation from her command center, amazed by what she was seeing. Human ships risked destruction to save Zephyrian lives. Human crews worked without rest to help people they had never met. It was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. "Captain Morrison," she said during one of their communications, "your people are risking their lives for us." "Why do they do this?" Jake was tired after 3 days of coordinating the rescue, but his voice was steady. "Because that's what people do for each other. When someone needs help, you help them. It's that simple." The breakthrough came when a group of young Altarians arrived with their own ships, defying their government's orders. They brought advanced deep-sea technology that could reach the hottest parts of the ocean. "We couldn't stand by and watch," their leader, a young Altarian named Veltar, explained to Jake. "Our parents' generation may have lost their compassion, but we haven't." With the additional help, the rescue operation began to succeed. City after city was evacuated as the combined fleet worked together. Humans, Centaurians, Rigelians, and even some Altarians worked side by side, united by their shared desire to save lives. Dr. Wang's habitat systems were working better than expected. The cooperation with Dr. Cathara had produced a design that could keep Zephyrians healthy during the long journey to their new home. The ships were filled with the sounds of different species working together, speaking different languages but united in purpose. But the operation wasn't without losses. 2 human transport ships were damaged by underwater volcanic eruptions. A Rigelian cargo vessel had to be evacuated when its life support systems failed. Several crew members were injured, including Captain Brooks, who was hurt while helping evacuate one of the deep cities. Despite the dangers, the rescue continued. Jake watched as ship after ship filled with Zephyrian refugees launched toward safety. Each departure was a victory, but he knew they were racing against time. "Captain," Mary Johnson called from her station, "we're getting reports from the planetary monitoring stations. The volcanic activity is reaching critical levels. The planet's core temperature is rising faster than ever." Jake looked at the display showing how many Zephyrians were still on the planet. They had saved over 200 million people, but there were still millions more in the cities that were hardest to reach. "How much time do we have?" he asked. "Maybe 2 weeks before the entire planet becomes uninhabitable," Mary replied. "But some cities might become too hot to evacuate in just a few days." Jake opened a communication channel to all the ships in the rescue fleet. "This is Captain Morrison to all vessels. We've done amazing work, but we're not finished yet. There are still millions of people down there who need our help. I know you're all tired, but we can't give up now." The response was immediate. Captain Brooks, despite her injuries, volunteered to lead another rescue mission. Dr. Wang. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of his ship, watching the last transport vessels leave the Zephyrian homeworld. Behind them, the beautiful blue planet was turning red as the underwater volcanoes continued to erupt. They had managed to save over 300 million Zephyrians, but nearly 100 million had been lost when the deepest cities became too hot to reach. The rescue fleet now carried the largest group of refugees in galactic history. Hundreds of ships filled with Zephyrian families were traveling through space, but they had nowhere to go. Jake knew that finding them a new home would be just as difficult as the rescue operation itself. "Captain, we're getting communications from several star systems," reported Lieutenant Mary Johnson. "Word about the refugees has spread, and we're receiving responses to our requests for sanctuary." Jake felt a moment of hope. "What are they saying?" Mary's face fell as she read the messages. "I'm sorry, sir. The vegan system says they don't have the resources to support aquatic life. The Proxima colonies claim they're already overcrowded. The independent worlds are all refusing because they say the refugees would be too expensive to care for." The hope died in Jake's chest. He should have expected this. The same reasoning that had led the Galactic Council to abandon the Zephyrians was now being used by individual star systems to turn away the refugees. Admiral Ben Torres had been thinking about this problem ever since the rescue operation began. From his office on Earth, he had been making calls to colony administrators and political leaders across human space. The conversation he was having now with Colonial Governor Steve Adams was typical of many others. "Ben, I understand the situation is terrible," Governor Adams said through the communication link, "but you're asking me to completely change our colonial development plans. New Pacifica was supposed to be home to 50 million human colonists. Now you want to give it to aliens?" "Not give it to them, Steve. Share it with them," Ben replied patiently. "The planet is mostly ocean anyway. There's plenty of room for both species." "But what about the humans who have been waiting for years to emigrate? What do I tell them?" Ben had been wrestling with this question himself. There were millions of humans living in crowded conditions on Earth and the older colonies, all hoping for the chance to start fresh on a new world. Using New Pacifica for refugees meant those people would have to wait even longer. "You tell them that sometimes being human means making sacrifices to help others," Ben said finally. "And you tell them that sharing a world with the Zephyrians might teach us things we never could have learned alone." The debate raged across human space. On Earth, Congress held emergency sessions to discuss whether humanity should give up one of their most promising colony worlds to house alien refugees. The arguments were passionate on both sides. Senator Patricia Lee spoke for those who opposed the plan. "We have a duty to our own species first. Humans have worked for generations to build these colonies. Why should we give them away to aliens who can't even contribute to our economy?" But Senator Frank Wilson argued for helping the refugees. "What kind of people would we be if we saved these beings from death only to abandon them in space? We told them we would help them, and help them we will." Meanwhile, the refugee fleet continued its slow journey through space. The conditions on the ships were difficult. Dr. Helen Wang worked constantly to maintain the life support systems that kept the Zephyrians alive. The portable habitats were working, but they were crowded and uncomfortable. Dr. Cathara, the Centauran scientist who had volunteered to help, noticed something interesting as she worked alongside the human medical teams. "Dr. Wang, have you observed the behavior patterns of the refugee families?" Helen looked up from the water filtration system she was repairing. "What do you mean?" "Despite their terrible situation, they are remaining calm and organized. They are sharing resources and caring for each other's children. Many species would have panic and fighting in conditions like this, but the Zephyrians are showing remarkable cooperation." Helen had noticed the same thing. The Zephyrian refugees weren't just sitting helplessly waiting to be saved. They were organizing themselves, helping with maintenance work on the ships, and even assisting the medical teams in caring for injured rescue workers. Captain Amy Brooks was recovering from her injuries in the medical bay when Flowing Wisdom came to visit her. The current speaker moved gracefully through the water-filled medical chamber, her large eyes showing concern for the human who had risked her life to save Zephyrian civilians. Captain Brooks, I wanted to thank you personally for your sacrifice. Flowing Wisdom said through the translator. You were injured saving my people? Amy smiled weakly from her medical bed. That's what we do for each other. Besides, your people have been helping us too. Your engineers have made improvements too. Our life support systems that we never could have thought of. It was true. The cooperation between humans and Zephyrians had led to innovations neither species could have achieved alone. Zephyrian understanding of fluid dynamics had improved the efficiency of the ship's engines. Human manufacturing techniques had helped create better water circulation systems for the refugee habitats, but the biggest challenge was still finding them a home. Jake received daily reports about the political situation on Earth and in the human colonies. The debate was becoming more heated as economic experts calculated the costs of sharing New Pacifica with the refugees. Treasury Secretary David Kim had run the numbers several times, and they weren't encouraging. Admiral Torres, supporting 300 million aquatic refugees, will cost us approximately 40% of our colonial development budget for the next 20 years. That means delayed expansion, fewer new colonies, and reduced opportunities for human immigrants. Ben understood the concerns, but he also knew something the economists didn't account for. David, what's the value of doing the right thing? What's the value of showing the galaxy that humans keep their promises? The answer came from an unexpected source. President Martinez received a communication from the Altarian government, the same species that had led the vote against helping the Zephyrians in the first place. High Chancellor Vexstar appeared on the communication screen, his tall, thin frame and blue skin making him look as cold as his previous words had been. But his message was surprising. President Martinez, the Altarian Council has been monitoring your species rescue operation. We have also been observing the protests and demonstrations on our own worlds. Martinez raised an eyebrow. Protests? Our younger generation has been demanding to know why we abandoned the Zephyrians. They have been comparing our decision to your actions, and they are not pleased with their government. Several colony worlds have threatened to declare independence unless we change our policies. The president tried to hide his satisfaction. What does this have to do with us, Chancellor? We would like to offer a trade agreement. If you proceed with settling the Zephyrians on New Pacifica, we will provide advanced terraforming technology for your other colony worlds. This technology will allow you to develop planets that are currently uninhabitable for humans. It was an incredible offer. The terraforming technology could open up dozens of new worlds for human colonization, more than making up for sharing New Pacifica with the refugees, but Martinez was suspicious. Why are you offering this now? Vexstar's expression became uncomfortable. Because our own people are demanding that we demonstrate the same compassion you have shown. If we do not appear to support your refugee settlement, we may face revolution. On our own worlds. Jake learned about the Altarian offer while the refugee fleet was still traveling toward New Pacifica. The news spread quickly through the ships, and the reaction was mixed. Some humans were angry that aliens who had refused to help were now trying to buy their way back into favor. But Flowing Wisdom had a different perspective. Captain Morrison, this offer proves something important. Your actions have changed how people think across the galaxy. Even those who opposed us before are now being forced to act with compassion. Jake thought about that as he watched the refugee ships around him. Maybe that was the real victory. Not just saving the Zephyrians, but showing other species that there was a better way to live together. The debate on Earth finally ended when an unexpected group spoke up. The human colonists who were supposed to settle on New Pacifica sent a message to President Martinez. Their spokesperson was Maria Santos, a teacher who had been planning to start a new school on the colony world. Mr. President, we've been watching. The news about the Zephyrian refugees. We've seen how they've helped improve your ships and worked alongside your crews. We think sharing our new world with them would make it a better place for everyone. The message was signed by over 30 million prospective colonists. They weren't just willing to share New Pacifica with the refugees. They were excited about the possibility of building a multi-species colony. President Martinez made the announcement the next day. The United Earth government officially offers the world of New Pacifica as a permanent home for the Zephyrian refugees. We will work together to build a colony where both species can thrive. Jake was on the bridge when the announcement came through. He immediately opened a communication channel to Flowing Wisdom. 5 years after the Great Rescue, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the shore of New Pacifica's largest ocean, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. The scene before him would have been impossible to imagine when this all began. Human children were playing in the shallow water alongside young Zephyrians, their laughter mixing with the musical sounds the aquatic beings made when they were happy. Jake was no longer a ship captain. The colonists had elected him as their first governor, and he now spent his days helping two very different species learn to live together. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every challenge. The early days on New Pacifica had been difficult. The human colonists arrived to find a world that was beautiful but very different from what they had expected. Most of the land was small islands scattered across vast oceans. The Zephyrian refugees, led by Flowing Wisdom, had been grateful for the sanctuary but worried about being a burden on their human hosts. Dr. Helen Wang, now the director of the New Pacifica Research Institute, had worked tirelessly to help both species adapt to their shared world. Her team had developed new technologies that allowed humans and Zephyrians to work together in ways no one had thought possible. The key was understanding that we each had different strengths. Helen explained to Jake during one of their weekly meetings. Humans are good at building things on land and in the air. Zephyrians understand the oceans better than any species we've ever met. When we combined our knowledge, we created something neither of us could have achieved alone. The results were amazing. Zephyrian knowledge of ocean currents had helped humans develop the most efficient tidal power generators in the galaxy. Human engineering skills had helped the Zephyrians build underwater cities that were more advanced than anything on their original homeworld. Together, they had created a sustainable energy system that other worlds were now trying to copy. But the real breakthrough had come 3 years ago when Dr. Wang and her Zephyrian colleague, Dr. Swimming Deep, had discovered something incredible. Working together in the Institute's joint research lab, they had developed a new form of faster-than-light communication that could send messages across the galaxy instantly. The discovery had changed everything. For the first time in galactic history, different species could communicate with each other in real time, no matter how far apart they were. The technology was based on principles that neither species could have discovered alone. It required human understanding of quantum mechanics combined with Zephyrian knowledge of fluid dynamics in ways that seemed impossible but somehow worked perfectly. "We're calling it the Harmony Drive," Dr. Wang had announced to the galactic scientific community. "And we're sharing it freely with all species." The decision to give away the technology for free had shocked many governments across the galaxy. Most species kept their best discoveries secret or sold them for enormous profits. But the humans and Zephyrians of New Pacifica had decided together that some things were too important to keep to themselves. Ambassador Lisa Carter, now serving as Earth's senior diplomat to the Galactic Council, had presented the Harmony Drive technology to the council chambers where this story had begun 5 years earlier. The same aliens who had voted against helping the Zephyrians now sat in amazement as she demonstrated communication with worlds on the opposite side of the galaxy. "This technology will revolutionize how our species interact with each other," Lisa had told the assembled representatives. "It will make trade faster, diplomacy more effective, and scientific cooperation easier than ever before." And it exists because two species chose to work together instead of competing with each other. High Chancellor Vextar of the Altarians had been the first to speak after her demonstration. the tall, blue-skinned alien who had once dismissed the Zephyrians as worthless now looked uncomfortable as he addressed the council. Ambassador Carter, this technology is clearly worth more than the combined gross domestic product of several star systems. Why are you giving it away for free? Lisa had smiled at the question. Because 5 years ago, when the Zephyrians needed help, this council decided they weren't worth saving. We want to make sure that kind of thinking never happens again. This technology comes with one condition. Any species that uses it must agree to provide aid to other species facing extinction or catastrophic disaster. The condition had been brilliant. Species that wanted access to the Harmony Drive had to sign the mutual aid compact that Lisa had proposed. Within 6 months, every major government in the galaxy had signed the agreement. The technology was too valuable to ignore, and the cost of helping others seemed small compared to the benefits, but the changes went deeper than just new technology and treaties. Captain Amy Brooks, now Admiral Brooks and commander of the joint, human Zephyrian fleet, had noticed something important happening across the galaxy. Dad, it's not just about the Harmony Drive, she told Jake during one of his visits to the fleet headquarters. People are changing. Young members of different species are working together like never before. They're forming friendships across species lines. They're falling in love and starting families together. It was true. New Pacifica had become a model that other worlds were trying to copy. Mixed colonies were springing up across the galaxy, with different species choosing to live together rather than in isolation. The idea that diversity made communities stronger was spreading from world to world. Jake often walked through the mixed neighborhoods of New Pacifica's capital city, marveling at how normal it had all become. Human children learned to swim from Zephyrian teachers. Zephyrian young people studied human art and music. Restaurants served food that combined the best of both cultures. It was the kind of society that most people had thought was impossible. Flowing wisdom had adapted to her new role as the Zephyrian representative on the Colonial Council. She and Jake worked together so well that many visitors couldn't tell which one was officially in charge. Her wisdom and Jake's practical experience complemented each other perfectly. Governor Morrison, she said to him during one of their planning sessions, I've been thinking about something. When we first met, you told me that humans help others because it's the right thing to do. I think I understand now what that means. Jake looked up from the development plans they had been reviewing. What do you mean? It means that the strongest species are not those with the biggest weapons or the most advanced technology. The strongest species are those that make others stronger too. Your people saved us, but in saving us, they also saved themselves. Jake nodded thoughtfully. How do you mean they saved themselves? If before the rescue humans were just another species trying to find their place in the galaxy, you were respected for your technology and your military, but you were not loved. Now humans are seen as the species that will help when others turn away. That gives you something more valuable than any weapon: trust. It was true. Earth's position in the galactic community had changed completely. Other species came to humans for mediation when they had disputes. Young aliens studied at human universities. Human colonies were seen as safe havens where different species could work together, but the real test of the new galactic order came when Admiral Torres received a familiar message in his office on Earth. It was a distress signal, just like the one that had started everything 5 years earlier. This time it came from the Andromedans, a crystalline species facing destruction from a cosmic storm that was tearing through their star system. Jake was visiting Earth when the signal arrived, and Ben immediately contacted him. Jake, we've got another situation. The Andromedans need help, and the storm will reach their homeworld in 6 months. Jake felt the familiar stirring of purpose he had experienced 5 years earlier. What's the council's response? That's the incredible part, Ben replied with a smile in his voice. They voted unanimously to help. Every species is contributing ships and resources. The Altarians are providing evacuation vessels. The Mentari are sending their best engineers. Even the Centaurians are donating their medical ships. And the Zephyrians? Flowing Wisdom has already volunteered the new deep space rescue ships your colonies have been building. She says her people know what it's like to need help, and they'll never let another species face that alone. The rescue fleet that assembled for the Andromedan evacuation was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from dozens of species worked together with a coordination that would have been impossible before the Harmony Drive. The operation was led jointly by human, Zephyrian, and Altarian commanders, with each species contributing their unique abilities. Jake watched the fleet launch from New Pacifica's orbital station, feeling proud of how far they had all come. The young Altarian pilot who flew the lead scout ship was the daughter of High Chancellor Vexstar, the Mentari engineer coordinating the evacuation was someone who had once calculated that helping the Zephyrians would be unprofitable. The Centaurian medical officer had been inspired to join the rescue service after watching the human response 5 years earlier. As the rescue fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, Jake received a message from Captain Morrison, a young human officer commanding one of the new joint species vessels. Governor, this is exactly what the galaxy should be like.